Hello everybody, my name is Markiplier and welcome back to DFW. After a whopping 4 months, we finally played another session of DFW. Isn't that crazy, guys? Isn't that wild? You should be so proud of us. You should all give us a round of applause, clap, tell us how awesome we are. We're so cool, so awesome. Aren't you so glad?
Just get some quick housekeeping things out of the way. First off, I want to talk about just the changes that have happened with DFW on our side. The biggest being that now our sessions are a lot shorter. There's too much content in them. There's so much content in them, and we're stupid, dumb idiots, and we can't get through all of that. So they're shorter now, which means that this will probably also be shorter, but it does mean that I can talk about smaller things, like little character moments and such like that. It'll be fun. Another thing is that our sessions are all virtual now, just all the time. They're going to be virtual 100% of the time. In the past, we used to play in person, and we're not doing that anymore. So that is another thing, which is why we won't really have physical bits anymore, like how we did with that weird plastic cow from, I think, session 2. Third thing, our DM is planning on making her own video where she talks about DFW and all of DFW's pre-campaign information, and I know that she also plans on making one about the secret DFW stuff, the stuff that we don't know about. I don't know when the first one will be happening. Probably soon. At the time of me recording this, she said that she is about to record it, so if it's out when I get this out, then I don't know, I guess I'll put it on screen, and if it's not, whatever. It's fine, it's chill. Without further ado, let's talk about Session 4. So Session 4 picks up right where we left off in Session 3, with the party having just left Ettenheim, and now they're heading to the nearby Abscongura, which is where Aaliyah is from, because she's the Duke there. I say Duke because she's trans. But yeah, all the party's here, they're in a carriage. Something tells me there's 2 carriages, because I think either there's 2 carriages or we were in just a much fancier carriage somehow. But we're in a carriage now with Aaliyah driving it, and we're all hanging out, heading to Abscongura. So during this little travel scene, Josephina and Fizz are playing sticks, and she keeps losing really badly, awfully. But she's so determined to beat him, and she can't beat him. And then Beat shows up, and she's watching them, and she ends up taking Josephina's place, and she goes and sulks in the corner while Beat is doing that. Meanwhile, Azrael, Rover, and Lyraver are hanging out outside of the carriage, all of them riding on their respective animals. Azrael isn't really doing much, but Rover decides to go and have a little chat with Lyraver. During this conversation, Rover kind of empathizes with the way that Lyraver is feeling after the death of his sister Walona. He tells Lyraver to just take it easy and chill out because he nor anyone else in the party expects Lyraver to, be mentally okay after this. So Rover then promises that, he's got Lyraver's back because they're the only friends in the party, and it's cool and it's chill, and they're having a great time. Not really. But Rover does leave Lyraver with one thing, and that is a warning. He specifically tells Lyraver not to do anything drastic as a response to Alona's death, and Lyraver says that he won't. So the party then arrives at an inn, appropriately named Inn. Inside, they end up meeting Scurvy, who is the innkeeper and an orc. We hate this guy. But he's a fan of Aaliyah. He has, merch of Aaliyah, and he's, fangirl. He's, fanboying over her. Also, I don't remember how this got brought up, but Scurvy thinks that Herx is the Felinelde of Abscongura, which doesn't make any sense. Scurvy might be an idiot. Another notable thing here is that Scurvy has a wanted poster of Azrael, which he then takes down after seeing Azrael walk in here. And then everyone's really mean to Scurvy, and they're all just bullying him. Beat pulls out a gun on him because Scurvy's just being that annoying. But they manage to get the keys to their room after a lot of threatening, and Rover pays for it all, and he even tips Scurvy to make sure that Scurvy shuts the hell up. And all of them go into their rooms, and they all find, in their pockets, a wooden placard that reads, "Repent." I will say that this is from a woman named Miss Rella. Oh no. Mrs. Relino, I think? I did not have any memory of her. We didn't put her down in our notes. I didn't talk about her in the recap, but she was apparently at the breakfast during session 3. She showed up there, and she is a maternal figure to Queen Aima. That's who she is. So we have this wooden placard that reads "Repent" from this woman that we met one time. Anyway, everyone's going to bed and doing all that. Meanwhile, when Rover and Fizz get into their room, Rover immediately bolts for the window, and he's checking to make sure that it's locked and that the windows are drawn and that everything's safe. Because, last time there was a stalker. But Fizz ends up telling Rover not to worry about Seki and that it's gonna be fine, and so they just go to bed. But we're not about to get a very peaceful night scene. No. If you remember, 2 certain somebodies had freaking blue rocks shoved down their throats. Isn't that wild? Isn't that crazy? You know what that means, everybody? We're getting an intramural. So, we cut to Rover, who wakes up in, the intramural lobby, I'm gonna call it. He wakes up there, and Fizz is no longer beside him. So it's just him on that bed of chains in the intramural lobby. Of course, Sprinkle, Josephina, and Novus's doors are there, as well as Fizz's, which is deep green, covered in wilted flowers with no color. A puddle of orange water rests at the foot of the door, and the door also has a tiny slit window with a pulsing light shining through it. The door behind Rover is red and slightly weathered. A wet banger hangs off of it, which Rover finds has his logo on it. So Rover walks into that room. And Rover ends up on a beach, surrounded by Greek-style architecture and sculptures. He's also now wearing a white priest outfit with the banner from outside draped around his neck like a scarf. In front of Rover is a church, which he goes into, and he is immediately met by just a ton of applause from all the people there. There are a couple of notable people sitting in the pews. Margaret is there, and she's tucked away in a dark corner, kind of just brooding, and Fizz and Roland are together, sitting in the front. Notably, everybody has their foreheads covered in some way. The church also has a stained glass window at what I think is the altar. Guys, I don't know, I haven't been to church in years, I don't know the parts of a church. But there's a stained glass window at the altar, which is depicting the lighthouse. And then outside of it, we are able to see that the actual lighthouse is there, visible through the window. The lighthouse is turned on, but its light is dimmed. There is also a hooded figure standing on the altar beside Rover. Rover goes to give a hesitant hello, and the crowd goes crazy. The hooded figure raises a hand, and the crowd goes silent. Rover tries to get a closer look at this figure, who just tilts his head back around to the crowd, kind of egging him on. And then Rover is not understanding, proceeds to say, "Go team!" Fizz is embarrassed, rightfully, and Roland just goes, "Woo!" Rover then notices that the people who don't have their foreheads properly covered have golden glows coming from them. He then goes to this one human girl, who is apparently important, and brushes away her bangs, revealing his logo. Everyone else in the church starts doing this, revealing that they also have the logos embedded into their foreheads. The cloaked figure removes their hood, revealing themselves to be Et, who also has this logo on her forehead. At this point, Roland and Fizz try to discreetly leave. Rover, who is rightfully freaked out, tries leaving as well, and is stopped by 2 men who are guarding the exit. When Rover asks to leave, they tell him that he can't because he hasn't given service yet. Rover then proceeds to give, actually the worst lie of his life, and he just goes, guys. Yep, that was the service. Yeah, that was it. I'm just really, really out of it right now. And for some reason, the guards let him go. They let him leave. But now Rover's outside, and he decides he's going to go to the lighthouse. He drops the banner that's draped around his neck onto the ground before going to the stone staircase that leads to the beach. As he heads down, Fizz shows up, confused and dressed normally. They both come to the conclusion that they went through the intramural lobby and both of them chose to go into Rover's door, which is why they're both here. They then proceed to do some weird gay domestic shit. Fizz is like, you gotta pinch me to find out if this is a dream. And Rover does that, and then Fizz proceeds to go, you should cut your nails. I hate these guys! But Rover starts to explain what's going on here, kind of, and he tells Fizz that he's going to the lighthouse, because, I don't know, that might be the way out. Notably, Rover says that this isn't the popular lighthouse located in Abscongura, which is what Fizz pointed out earlier. When Fizz was kind of confused about the lighthouse and its whole existence, he mentioned a lighthouse in Abscongura, which is absolute bullshit. When we do get to Abscongura, there is notably not a lighthouse there, so this is nonsense. But Rover does say, this isn't the lighthouse that's in Abscongura, but he is familiar with it. Fizz doesn't really make much of an effort to ask what Rover means by this. He's confused by what Rover means by this, but he doesn't bother to press any further. So they start walking to the lighthouse, and Rover then proceeds to slip on a rock and pass out on the beach. Notably, he doesn't feel pain when this happens, but he wakes up, he's still in the intramural, and Fizz is there tapping on his face and confused as hell. They then keep going, and they reach a stone bridge that separates them from the lighthouse, which has the same door as the entrance to Rover's intramural. They start walking along the bridge together, but the lighthouse seems to get further away, as if the bridge is stretching. Fizz gets angry about this, which is notably pretty out of character for him. He's not the type of guy to really get angry, but he tries to run to the lighthouse. This doesn't end up working, and if anything, he only really seems to get closer to Rover. Fizz then ends up giving up, and he falls to his knees. He says that he feels trapped again, but doesn't elaborate when Rover asks what he means by this. Fizz then suggests that Rover goes alone, so he does. When Rover walks on the bridge by himself, it stops elongating, but it does begin to crack. And after 3 steps, the bridge snaps, and the rocks fall into the water, taking Rover with. Fizz dives in after Rover, but he doesn't appear underwater with him. Rover tries swimming to the top, but it's as if there's a wall there, stopping him from breaching the surface. And so Rover gives up. He closes his eyes, and he drowns. And then he wakes up in the hotel room. And he can hear Fizz is already awake, and he is in the shower. After Fizz gets out of the shower, he and Rover have a very quick conversation where they realize that, they had the same dream. And they connect it to what Novus was saying about the intramurals and all that, before he wonderfully killed himself. Cutting away from them, everyone's just getting up to shenanigans. First off, Azrael aces down, actually chases Scurvy out of the inn and just, outside. And this is because he ended up learning that Scurvy is selling the same lychee-like fruit that was in Heimer's room. It turns out the thing is not that special. It comes from Ettenheim, and it used to come from Nalika before it got shut down. Then cutting back to Fizz, he goes and has a little conversation with Beat. Both of them are pretty worried about the others, and they're kind of bonding over that. Fizz claims that he hasn't lost anybody before in the past, so he can't really relate on that front, I think both with Beat and with Laraver. Which, I'm gonna be real, I don't believe him about, but that's fine. He claims that he hasn't lost anybody before. But Fizz also, during this scene, wishes that he could be of more help to everybody. So who knows, maybe that'll amount to something. Then Aaliyah shows up and she basically just drags Lyver and Rover out of their rooms. And when they get down, we get to see that Hila and Josefina are incredibly hungover. I don't even think hungover is the right word. They were still drunk, I think. But Rover ends up doing a thing that Roland did for him in the past, when he also was pass-out drunk on the streets and Roland had to pick him up after he was hungover. So he goes and he gets a glass of water for Josefina, and he tells her that it's for the hangover. And then she spills the water all over herself. But she takes it, and I think that's some character development. At least she's not telling him to kill himself. Ignoring the rest of the other shenanigans that I've really ignored during this, Everyone then hops into the carriage and they leave, continuing off to Abscongura. So, the party then arrives at a little marketplace in Abscongura. There's like a ton of advertisements around the place for something called the Gira Games. When we get there, Aaliyah is immediately bombarded by fans, and so the party just kind of dishes her and they start exploring around the market. In the market, there are 6 things here. There's a clairvoyant Aarakocra who may or may not be a fake. She's very, very campy. There is an orc handing out kebabs. There is a Coat Chronicle stand. There is a junk stall. And yes, I am referring to Junk, the store from Session 2, the like weird like antique thrift store with just random objects. There's a stall for that now, and it's run by the same guy who ran the store in Ettenheim. There's also a pink tiefling selling pink cupcakes, and there are some kids playing with dolls. First off, Rover heads to the clairvoyant and is not impressed at all, and she ends up kicking him out because she senses some kind of like bad energy about his future. Next up, Lyra goes and gets a paper which is talking about the masquerade attack, and it specifically warns readers to be wary of anybody with a keyhole marking on them. Something important about that is that the picture that they show to like kind of tell you this is what you're looking out for is a picture of Novus. Then everyone goes to Junk, and Rover has to buy Azriel a replica of that stupid cow, but this one doesn't make noise, and so everyone can rejoice. Then everyone goes over to the pink tiefling, and they get into some shenanigans with her cupcakes, which I'm not really going to explain it, but it's a reference to Descendants Rise of Red. If that says anything at all. Then the crew head over to the orc, who is giving out free kebabs and taking donations for his daughter, who's in the Gira Games. By the way, I don't know why I don't have it written down here, but this guy is sponsored by the Gira Games. Yippee! Another little character moment during the scene, specifically for Rover, because I understand him, he's my little guy. When the orc hands out these free kebabs for them, Rover refuses them because he kind of interrogates this poor guy and is like, where'd you get your meat from? How did you kill it? And he finds out that this orc got the meat by hunting it with a gun. Something that Roland particularly was not very fond of. He thought it unethical. So naturally Rover doesn't think it's ethical either, and he doesn't really want to partake in that. But basically everyone else ends up eating some, I think except for Fizz and Lyra. It's not that important. But this orc keeps talking to us, and he tells us that this is the 50th anniversary of the Gira Games, and it's gonna be a good one. So after we're done talking to this orc, the crew then heads over to those children who are playing with their dolls. And we find out that they are basically one-to-one replicas of Novus, Lyra, Rover, and Azriel, the original party. Something to note is that Rover and Azriel's dolls are quote-unquote scarily accurate. Given that these are the 2 characters that are hiding some part of them, you can take a wild guess what that's about. Anyway, after seeing the party walk up on them, the kids immediately run off. They're terrified, and they drop their dolls in the process. So I believe around this time is when we got this quick little scene of Aaliyah being surrounded by all of her fans, and she's saying something along the lines of, oh, I can't participate in the Gira Games anymore because, you know, I'm a duke. I have things to do. I can't just go play a game for a little while. And, God, I honestly don't know because it's not in our notes. But during this scene, I think, some guards kind of just like show up and they start just taking the party away. And the only one to really break free is Beat, who then uses Pass Without Trace on herself and Fidus, and they start following the party as they're being brought up to the mountain. The party is then taken into a large mansion. There are agias of different types and colors that cover the walls, and there are statues that are references to other little campaigns and one-shots, which is very, very cute and silly. I appreciate that a lot. Yay! So the person that was leading us there was this hooded figure who is the Felinelde, and they revealed themselves to be someone named Eve. I had to hesitate because I know who Eve is. You don't know who Eve is. But Eve is specifically a reference to a different campaign that some of the other guys did. I wasn't in it. But Eve is from there. And now she's here and she's the Felinelde. And she's also a collector of Agias. Me from the future here. But I just remember that I didn't explain, like, what Eve is. or anything. So Eve is a human, and she has holes in her hands, like she's freaking WD Gasser or something. No, I didn't say that. I swear. So Eve then offers tea to everyone. Azrael and Lyra are the only ones that don't drink it, though. And this is going to be important. While we're sitting here, we get some information about the Agias. Which, oh god, we're really bad at asking questions, so chances are, we'll get some, like, out-of-character information about the Agias, and if we do, I'll probably just make something separate to talk about that as well. Whoopsie, our bad, we're kinda stupid. But what we do end up learning in session is that the Agias appeared only about a month ago. Before then, Agias were not a thing, but each one does something different. And apparently there was one of them in here that could cure schizophrenia, or, like, act like medication, and we were supposed to, like, find that out, and then Rover could get medicated for his schizophrenia. But he can't because we forgot to ask. Anyway, the third little bit of information that we learned is that specifically intramural Agias, the ones that we keep eating, are super duper rare, and Eve only has one of them. She also doesn't believe that the intramurals are real things, but she gives Azrael her one intramural Agia anyway, so that he can eat it and then report his findings. So after Azrael eats that Agia, Eve's like, okay, I'm gonna take you down this cool little spot that I want to show you all. So she takes everyone down a door to the right, which leads them into a room that is filled with doll sets. All of these dolls are of the party, showcasing important moments from the past, present, and the masquerade. As the party starts getting scared and suspicious, everyone who drank the tea then starts falling asleep, and Eve's guards have to knock out Azrael and Lyra. Everyone then wakes up one by one, with Rover and Beat having both dreamed about their ideal lives. Beat had dreamt of her family, all alive and well. Meanwhile, Rover had dreamt of retiring, living in the butchery with Roland, and maybe even being married to Fizz. But they wake up in some kind of dungeon which is attached to a stadium. Everyone's things have been taken and placed in a cage made of bone in the center of the arena. And on top of that, Puppy, Desire, and Tony are also here, which doesn't scare me at all. But Leech and Fidus are not here. Thank God. So it's at this point that Eve makes her grand appearance. She holds up her hand and the light of the sun shines through the hole in it, and she welcomes everybody in the stands to the Gura Games. She introduces this specific one as a death match, and that is where the session ends. I'm scared. I'm really scared. But we'll get to the Gura Games in session 5. And nothing bad is gonna happen at all.